Hello and welcome to this brand new edition of Global Lens on News9 Live with me, Neha. Khanna. As always, we have a packed show for you. Let's get started with our top story. Are India-U.S. ties beginning to feel the strain of the India-Canada diplomatic row? That's the question now being asked. Today, the United States issued a strongly worded denial, countering reports that the diplomatic tussle between India and Canada over Justin Trudeau's allegations against the Modi government will worsen ties between New Delhi and Washington, D.C. The U.S. Embassy in New Delhi issued the denial after a report in U.S.-based publication Politico titled "Why Biden is Mum on the India-Canada Spat." The report quoted an official as saying that the U.S. ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, had told his team that India-U.S. ties could get worse for a time and that the U.S. may need to reduce its contacts with Indian officials for an undefined period of time. Reacting to that report, which caused a flutter, the U.S. Embassy issued a statement saying the U.S. Embassy dismisses these reports. Ambassador Garcetti is working hard every day to deepen the partnership between the people and governments of the United States and India. As his personal engagement and public schedule demonstrates, Ambassador Garcetti and the U.S. mission to India are working every day to advance the important strategic and consequential partnership that we have with India. This comes weeks after Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau sparked a major diplomatic row by accusing India of orchestrating the killing of Khanistani terrorist and Canadian citizen Hardeep Singh Nijjar. Trudeau said this in the Canadian Parliament without furnishing any evidence to back his claims. India has called the allegations absurd and motivated. The Biden administration has so far maintained that the Canadian government's allegations need to be probed. The matter also came up during a meeting between India's External Affairs Minister Dr. S. Jaishankar and U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken during the former's trip to the U.S. The issue was also discussed when Dr. S. Jaishankar and National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan met. John Kirby, coordinator for strategic communications at the National Security Council in the White House, said recently, "We'll certainly leave it to those two countries to talk about their bilateral relationship. We've been clear these allegations are serious. They need to be fully investigated. And of course, as we've said before, we urge India to participate actively in that investigation." Earlier, the Washington Post had reported that Canada had sought a public condemnation of Nijjar's killing from its allies, including the U.S., ahead of the G20 summit in India. But the other G7 countries were reluctant to do so. So just what happens next? Is it going to be wait and watch for the U.S. in this matter? Also, with Justin Trudeau recently saying Canada is not looking to escalate the situation with India and will continue to engage responsibly and constructively, will New Delhi, through this extremely difficult time, is Ottawa looking to climb down from its initial stance and extend an olive branch of sorts to New Delhi? And what about the elusive evidence that Canada is expected to furnish to back its claims against New Delhi?
As I said, I think there are conversations that are ongoing, and I don't want to get into details of diplomatic conversations as and when we have something to share on that. But as I mentioned, we have sought parity and have outlined the reasons why. I think so that I would, on the report that you mentioned, okay, since I'm doing some political report, I also saw, but I saw also a statement by the U.S. spokesperson here, the embassy, saying that he dismisses those reports. In any case, I was not going to comment on them. There is an internal report of somebody saying something on the U.S. side, but the U.S., I think, State Department or the embassy here has just dismissed those reports, I think, a few minutes ago. So I don't need to comment on them, hopefully. Similarly, I think this question relating to Suhasini related to Canada and also Megha. Megha, I just on the Canada, I'll come to that. Maldivians, you can please take it. I have already answered the question on cooperation. On Suhasini, on the defense part, look, on the issue you mentioned on specifically on visas, right? Now, yes, we had, I think, initially talked about expedited visas for those who are required, but let me also clarify in the context of the parity, it's up to the Canadian side who they choose to staff their High Commission with. So I would refer you to details of, for them, for any details in this regard. Our concerns are related to ensuring parity in diplomatic presence. And again, as I said, why? And I think, that's been a focus very clearly. On the issue of Prime Minister of Canada, Megha, you had mentioned about visa processing, they should stay. Again, as I said, we are looking at parity. We are looking at the fact that there have been interference and there has been a much higher number of Canadian diplomats here, and hence the discussions on achieving parity are ongoing. And rest of it, I can't comment on it yet. Obviously, if the parity is achieved, given that Canada has a much larger number of people there, would likely be a reduction in the numbers. We have been taking up concerns about the security of our diplomats and our premises and other elements related to people there who are wanted by our security or our judicial systems. And we will continue to do that, and that's an ongoing conversation. I don't want to get into individual persons, but in the UK there was a protest on 2nd October, and we certainly have taken up our concerns on the security of diplomats and premises there with the UK authorities, and this has been ongoing thing. The issue is about security, about ensuring that our diplomats are able to function normally, and our premises are safe, and that the community is not targeted.
All right, so what should be made of this latest controversy following this report in a US-based publication, a report that the US has, the US government, the US embassy here in India has denied. Let's understand this with our panel of experts. Joining me on Global Lens tonight, former Indian diplomats, Ambassador Ashok Sajanhar and Ambassador R.P. Kaushik. Also with us on the show is Yashovardhan Azad, former Special Director of the Intelligence Bureau. Gentlemen, welcome to Global Lens. Ambassador Sajanhar, let me begin with you. Yes, the US Embassy in New Delhi has issued a strongly worded denial. But fact of the matter is that this report in Washington DC based Politico has already set the cat among the pigeons, because it's actually quoted the US Ambassador to India, Eric Garcetti, as having told officials that not only is the India-Canada row taking its toll on India-U.S. ties, but that for a while or an undefined period of time, you may actually see some sort of a distance between India and the U.S. Now, obviously, it is contrary to all the noises that Washington, D.C. has made in recent weeks and months, going out of its way to woo India. But at the same time, what we cannot ignore, Ambassador Sajanhar, is how ever since Justin Trudeau's made his allegations, unsubstantiated ones, in the Canadian Parliament, India has been getting virtually daily reminders from the United States on how these allegations are serious and India needs to cooperate with the Canadian probe. The question is, what should we make of these conflicting stories that are emerging?
Yeah, thank you very much, Neha, for having me on your show. So just a couple of things. I think the United States finds itself in a rather unenviable position, in a difficult position, because after all, on one side, you have a long-standing ally, a NATO partner, NATO member, also partner in Five Eyes, a partner in G7. You work together very closely, and it's an ally. It's much more than a partner, so to say. So it's a defense ally, it's a security ally. So one is maintaining relations with that particular ally, and the second is in terms of very a global strategic partnership with India that has been growing, that has been expanding, and I think we, as the External Affairs Minister said when he was in Washington, D.C., that the bilateral relations partnership between the two countries is the best it has ever been. And of course, as you also mentioned, you ain't seen nothing yet. So, it's going very well. It's progressing very well. The role that the United States played as far as the G20 summit is concerned in terms of getting the consensus declaration there, no one really expected it, but we managed to get that. And, whether it is the IMEC or that is the India, Middle East, Europe economic corridor that was signed on the sidelines of the G20, the fact that President Biden has been invited for the 26th January as the chief guest, that India is going to host the Quad Summit next year in India. So I think for all the reasons, the relationship between the two countries is doing well, is going strong. And what I can see is that, as I said, the United States is not in a very happy position, not a very comfortable position, because it has to maintain relations with both of them. That's what it's trying to do. And it is making these noises, it is making these sounds that India needs to cooperate, India needs to work together, basically to mollify Canada. It has not gone all the way that Canada wanted, that you have a condemnation of India either at the G7 or otherwise. And none of that has happened. But, you keep making some noises so that, Canada also doesn't feel that it has been forsaken by its allies and its friends. But as far as the partnership with India is concerned, I frankly do not feel that there might be a small hiccup here, going forward. But I don't think either in terms of time or in terms of substance, that is going to, have any significant impact on the onward progression as far as our relationship is concerned. And this is what we have seen, whatever the report might have been in Politico. But the message coming out of Washington, D.C. and from the U.S. Embassy in New Delhi is that the relations are on a very solid footing. The last point, let me say, when the readouts came out, you're showing the images of the meeting between Antony Blinken and Dr. Jaishankar. So when the readouts came out for this meeting, neither of the two sides mentioned about the fact that discussions on the Canadian allegations, Canadian charge has been made. Although Justin Trudeau had said before this meeting that he has asked Mr. Blinken to take up this issue.
But if I may just add there, sir, following that meeting between Blinken and Jaishankar, our External Affairs Minister is on record as saying, yes, we discussed this. I did talk to Antony Blinken about this. Yes.
I was coming to that, Neha.
Yes.
I was coming to that. And that's the final point that I wanted to make. He did say when he was asked this question at the Hudson Institute by Walter Russell Mead, yes, that the discussions did take place, and that we tried to inform each other of our positions. And hopefully there is a better understanding and a better appreciation of the stand of the two sides. And Indian stand has been very clear. There's been number one, there's been no evidence. Number two, it is not the Government of India policy. And I think the matter rests there.
Okay. Yeah. Ambassador Kaushik, let me come to you. Is the United States caught between a rock and a hard place? Is it trying to run with the hare and hunt with the hounds? I'm going to ask you another question. Ambassador Suresh Goyal was on our show last night and he threw a curveball in the middle of the discussion wherein he actually insinuated that Canada and Justin Trudeau couldn't have done any of this without the solid backing of the United States, and probably even did so at the prodding of the US. Now, that is a theory that has been discussed in some quarters. I am not suggesting for a moment that that is the truth. Of course, as far as we are concerned, it is Justin Trudeau who stood up on the floor of the House of Commons and made those allegations against India. But how do you perceive America's role in all of this? What are we to make of the various statements that are coming in?
I'm afraid, as far as America is concerned, in fact, I would doubt that even the part of American ambassador in India, in which he said that it has made certain kind of a dent between U.S. and India's relationship, is highly ill-advised. In fact, as far as I can see, I would certainly agree with the previous speaker that it has had no effect at all whatsoever, and the U.S. has assured us a number of times on this issue. However, there are certain type of lukewarm approaches on this issue. After all, you must understand what exactly is the issue, as to create this kind of a diplomatic furore all over and creating such a kind of a noise in the media and other places also. I don't think it deserves that much of attention. When hundreds and hundreds of people died in that Kanishka event, unfortunately, incident. Uh, that could have been a little noisier, a little more louder in terms of making noise here and there. But that passed on. Somehow India made enough of approaches, gave all kinds of suggestions and everything, but nothing happened. However, America's position is very clear. You can choose everything, but you can't choose your neighbor. Canada, India, Canada and the U.S. have been on very good relationship ever since we can see historically. As far as the Khalistani element is concerned, you know it very well, that it is a very negligible populace, not population, in the midst of the Indian immigrants who have settled down there. And
I
the
take your
Indian,
point, sir, but if we could please keep the focus for a moment on the US, sir. That really is the big development of the day.
now, as far as I can see, that the U.S. is under no pressure at all, as far as I can see. Nor do I visualize any great shift in the U.S. approach towards India, because the relationship of late has become so important for the U.S. that they cannot take any advantage in this position and cannot create a disadvantage to themselves or for India for that purpose. Indo-Pacific issue, Taiwan issue, issues of trade, the kind of relationship that with Pakistan they are developing, and the other kind of problems that have come up. So I would imagine that as far as the U.S. is concerned, that has been made out a little too much. I don't find any great pressure coming up from the U.S. as far as I can see. A little bit of that I understand of the U.S. United States would make and has made polite noise on the issue, as perhaps as a great neighbor, the U.S. would feel necessary, but that would go into any particular depth. I don't really support that issue at all.
Okay, so you were saying we don't really need to worry about this having any sort of a serious impact on India-US ties, which in fact have really been growing very, very strongly of late, especially since Prime Minister Narendra Modi's recent state visit to DC. Yashubardhan Azad, let me bring you in. You are a man who understands intelligence gathering better than most others. Now, you know, Justin Trudeau has said that he based his allegations on quote-unquote credible allegations, as he puts it. We are still waiting for evidence to be presented. And he said that one of the Five Eyes partners had shared intelligence to this effect with Canada. The indication was, even though nobody's been named, that it might have come from the United States. If for the benefit of our viewers, you could just explain, how does an alliance such as Five Eyes really work? What do you think has happened in this case?
See, first of all, the statement itself of Justin Trudeau is beset with a lot of problems, you see. The first question is, you know, he was basically talking about Nija's murder, which took place about 3.5 months back. And in that murder itself, the investigation, which according to international norms has to proceed through a certain kind of, law or something like that. But in this particular case, it was said that there were two masked men who had shot at him. And there was also a getaway car, but none of them have been apprehended. None of them have been questioned. And in fact, according to a report by the Washington Post, even the people around have not been questioned at all. So there are I can say there are serious flaws in the investigation. Now, as far as the Five Eyes are concerned, there is a sharing of intelligence for mutual benefit, because these are friendly nations. And this kind of evidence or this kind of intelligence can be electronic based. It can be, tapping of telephones, or that a huge amount which is done in America or is done by the GCHQ, England. So it is for mutual benefit. Now, when Justin Trudeau said that the intelligence was shared by the United States after the murder took place, and Canada pointed towards credible allegations. Obviously, it also means that Canada was also kind of having a technical surveillance on our diplomats to aid that across the channel talks, etc. maybe some intelligence was shared by America, and that is all on a routine basis. That kind of intelligence is shared by all the friendly countries with each other. It must have been with Japan, Australia, etc. But to say that in this specific case, if America has given intelligence and then it has been able to aid that investigation and you have come up with new findings, then it becomes some kind of a credible evidence which you have to share. Now, none of that has happened. So there might be sharing of many intelligence of many kinds, but for this specific investigation, if it has brought any value addition, then that has to be brought to Indian authorities, which has not been done for the last 4 months. So I would say that state is frozen. And I don't think why should, for a particular investigation, America should go out of its way to create something untoward in our diplomatic relations. So we are still exactly at that same point. In fact, appropriate noises have started coming from Canada also that we don't want to, we want to keep our relations intact with India. So I think we should leave it at that level and not see anything, anything bizarre, new happening in the relations or anything new happening, even the investigation by way of findings.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fact of the matter is, no evidence has been forthcoming. And yes, you're quite right, Justin Trudeau also, it seems, has climbed down from his stance somewhat when he said, we don't want to escalate this matter any further with India. We are committed to building stronger ties with New Delhi. All right, there's been another important development with regard to this story, gentlemen. Let's talk about that now. Union Home Minister Amit Shah today inaugurated an important anti-terror conference in New Delhi where intelligence and investigation agencies are discussing current and emerging threats to India's national security, including funding and violent activities of pro-Khalistani extremists operating from foreign soil. The conference has been called by the National Investigation Agency, the country's premier anti-terror agency, in the wake of the recent Khalistani and terror activities both in India and abroad, especially in Canada. The closed-door two-day event is being attended by all federal intelligence agencies, the Research and Analysis Wing, the Intelligence Bureau, the Enforcement Directorate, the Central Bureau of Investigation, the National Technical Research Organization and others. Also in attendance are the anti-terrorist squads of state police forces from across the country and other concerned forces under the Home Ministry. Ahead of the conference, Home Minister Amit Shah said, the Modi government is firmly committed to rooting out terrorism from the country. I will inaugurate the third anti-terror conference hosted by NIA in New Delhi and illustrate Modi ji's vision behind the policy of zero tolerance for terrorism adopted by our nation. Counter-terrorism issues from financing to interstate and foreign links of gangsters with banned terror outfits like multiple Khalistani entities are among the issues being discussed. Sources say besides pro-Khalistan extremists, Pakistan-sponsored terrorism, Chinese funding of fintech companies, smuggling of drugs via maritime route, cyber crimes, use of digital currencies by terrorists and northeast insurgency and left-wing extremism are also on the agenda. The timing of the meeting is significant as the issue of Canada sheltering many Khalistani extremists and gangsters has led to a major diplomatic standoff between New Delhi and Ottawa. The NIA is currently investigating over half a dozen cases related to the nexus between Khalistani elements and gangsters and about 24 wanted persons who are operating from Canadian soil, carrying out attacks on the Indian High Commission and consulates, threatening the Hindu community in that country and organizing terror attacks and targeted killings in India. Dismantling this Khalistani network is going to be a key topic during the conference. That's what an officer was quoted as saying. Remember, India has provided concrete evidence in the form of multiple dossiers and sought action by the Canadian authorities against these pro-Khalistan forces that have been allowed to operate freely and with impunity from Canadian soil for years and decades now. But Canada has brazenly looked the other way every time India has raised concern over anti-India activities in that country. In fact, Ottawa has turned down every single extradition request made by India over the years, at last count at least 25. In fact, the Justin Trudeau government has been known to pander to this constituency of Khalistani and anti-India elements for the sake of cynical vote bank politics. A well-known Khalistani sympathizer, Jagmeet Singh, and his party even support Trudeau's minority government. And adding insult to injury, Trudeau decided to accuse India of foreign interference. Needless to say, India is deeply upset, and with good reason, and has made it clear that its crackdown on these anti-India elements will continue unabated. Let's go back to our guests for more on this. Ambassador Sajjan Har, while a whole range of issues, including, of course, Pakistan-sponsored terrorism and the challenge that even China poses, will be discussed at this two-day conference, do you believe that coming as it does in the backdrop of the anti-India activities by Khalistani elements, especially those that have been reported from Canada, this particular conference assumes a lot of significance? How would you see it?
No, absolutely. I agree with you. I think this is sending out a very strong message, a very clear message, a very unambiguous message that India is very serious as far as stamping out Khalistani terrorism is concerned. And I think we have walked the talk. We are not sort of, just speaking about it, but, we have taken action. NIA has gone into full throttle as far as action against, the linkages of the Khalistani terrorists in India are concerned. So definitely it is a message to this, issue that is currently in front of us with Canada. But also, I would imagine, as far as UK is concerned, Australia is concerned, New Zealand and the United States, because that is also, we have seen, these are the 4 or 5 countries where we have seen that the Khalistani extremism and organized crime committed by them has come to the fore. Now, there have been some reports in the media. I have seen that today evening there have been about 6 or 8 of these Khalistani terrorists who have been arrested in Canada with a huge cache of arms. We need to still, I guess, confirm and verify these reports. But, if it is as an instance of, what India has been pushing back against Canada, I would say it is a welcome development, but this is only the first step because, Canada and the other governments need to take strong measures against such elements because, India has, Neha, made it out very clearly, brought it out very clearly that these elements, they might be supported by, they are being supported, let me not use this word might, they are being supported by the ISI. My own experience in different countries, whether it is in Brussels, as far as the European Union is concerned, sending out representatives there, or even in the United States, ISI has been extremely active in funding these terrorists and also in terms of these think tanks who are working on these issues of Khalistan, Kashmir. Kashmir has gone a little on the back burner after the August 5, 2019 decision by India to abrogate Article 370. But definitely what we've been, bringing to the attention of the governments is that it is not only against India, it is not only India that suffers, but this support or looking the other side as far as organized crime is concerned is particularly harmful to those countries. So yes, to respond to your question, definitely this is sending out a message, a strong message, a clear message, which these countries should definitely take note of, cognizance of, and take action for their own security, for their own, for the peace and stability in their own country, rather than sort of looking only at the benefits that India will be able to get out of this.
I couldn't agree more with you, Ambassador Sajjan Har. Let me go across to Ambassador Kaushik at this point. Sir, what do you make of this conference that's taking place here in the national capital? Do you also believe that this sends out a strong message to a country like Canada, which has over the years ignored every piece of evidence that India has shared with regard to Khalistani activity taking place on Canadian soil?
Yeah, this is the most appropriate step that the Home Ministry has taken. It was overdue, in fact, in certain cases. And highlighting the heinous crime that they are committing all over India in the name of one thing or the other. should be adequately publicized. In fact, I would go a little step further and say the publicity part of India in terms of showing where exactly we are and how exactly we are running everything is lacking to a certain extent. Now, of course, it has caught up a great deal, and this has done some good service to the Indian cause. Other thing being that the intelligence apparatus, which is prevalent either in Canada or in the U.S., should be woken up, and they should be told that you may also highlight and publicize what exactly is happening in India by the terrorists. What kind of crimes are being perpetrated in this nation? Why are they not seized of that matter in order to enliven the democratic values, the cultural values, and the general interest of the nation? I think if those points are carried a little too far and little too aggressively, if you wish to put it that way, it might serve some good purpose for us. Otherwise, the kind of crime that is taking place by the terrorists, sometimes you may be surprised to know that even in the United States, the people are not well informed about the kind of terrorist activity that prevalent in India. Not all of them. Somehow the adequate publicity has to reach and convince the people there and elsewhere what exactly has been happening and what exactly is being done by these terrorists. I know their intelligence apparatus must be aware of all the things, but somehow there is not much of a space in publicity in those countries. And it is high time that we publicize it. It's high time we carry it forward. Of course, as far as the internal situation is concerned, India has to be fiercely aware of the consequences that it has in its fallout effect in the country. Therefore, stern action, stern policies, every strong measure should be taken up in order to suppress any such activities here.
Okay.
And I would say to that extent that even the opposition should be in a position to cooperate wherever necessary in such matters. They need not always oppose everything that the government does. They can
No,
do
I
some-
think there's by and large been unanimity among political parties in India on this issue vis-a-vis Canada and the Khalistani threat. And it's interesting, you're saying if the Canadian government is not listening to you, maybe it's time to make the people of Canada aware of exactly what's been going on. Yashowardhan Azad, let me ask you this question. Yes, the NIA has carried out raids at multiple locations targeting Khalistani extremists and terrorists in recent times. Not just in Punjab, but across the country, they have seized their assets. Some arrests have been made as well. But the larger question still remains, how do you deal with a country that is refusing to cooperate with you? You've shared with them dossier after dossier detailing, the criminal and terrorist activities of a lot of their citizens, who are wanted in India, even for crimes such as targeted killings. And yet the Canadian government continues to look the other way. How do you deal with a country like that? I mean, this is not even Pakistan you're talking about.
Yeah, let me deal first with the NIA meeting because we spent some time over this and that was the focus of the discussion earlier. And now, the NIA meeting is a routine meeting. It's a third anti-terror meeting, third year. And therefore, the new subjects which have been added, of course, the recent arrests of the scribes, and the Khalistani terrorists. So let me also caution that we should not overplay this. I mean, India is doing very well on the security front. It is an emerging, powerful nation. It has got good bilateral relations now with America, excellent relations. It's doing very well with Russia. And yes, there is some kind of, a problem with Canada, but that does not mean that we overplay the Khalistani terrorism has made no impact in Punjab, nothing at all. There are some criminal activities which are being financed and which has been orchestrated from Canada. That's about all. Yes, the most important part is what should we do about the Khalistani activities which are taking place in these foreign countries. First of all, these Khalistanis are going as refugees, trying to seek asylum and painting a picture that something is happening in Punjab which is, affecting the Sikhs deeply. So in that respect, I support the previous speaker's stand that yes, we need to tell the people more also, besides sharing only our mountains of dossiers with the Canadian government and the other governments. Now, in the case of these terrorists who have gone there, and these are also petty terrorists. Let me tell you that when there was a visit facilitated by the ISI or the RCMP, because Niger was already obviously an asset of the Canadian Security and Intelligence Services, when he traveled to Pakistan and when he came back, nothing really happened. Nothing happened in Punjab. What is happening is Punjab is the usual state-backed, flying of the drones, coming with drugs and some arms and ammunition. It has made no impact in Punjab. There's just a few crimes here and there. As far as the sending of the terrorists back to India is concerned, yes, if the red corner notice has been issued by the Interpol, I mean, you've done your bit. What else can you do? What you can certainly do is, if Canada is raising this issue with United States, you should also raise this issue with all these 5 countries and tell them what exactly has been the problem with Canada. Let me also tell you that Canada has a history of somehow collecting all these refugees, because Sri Lanka was most agitated with the support LTTE was getting in terms of funding and operations from Canada. And in fact, recently, Sri Lanka supported India very strongly on this particular issue, quoting the LTTE incident. So I would make 2 points here. Number one, we should actively pursue with our diplomacy with these countries, make them aware, the people also, what exactly is happening from their soil, because secessionism should not be allowed in the name of free speech. And we should carry on that regardless of, because no ties have really been impacted with this except with Canada. And secondly, we should not overplay this terrorism hand. India is a strong nation. India is doing very well by way of statistics. So we should not, prove to the world that something so serious is happening in India that, the intelligence agencies and all are catching terrorists over here. No, these are and we are pursuing this in a proper way.
No, you're quite right. Fact of the matter is the Khalistan movement is all but dead in India. The only country that's keeping it alive is Canada. What I also find very interesting, Mr. Azad, is you saying that Niger was most certainly a Canadian intelligence asset, because so far this has only been speculated on. It's only when Niger's son gave an interview to a Canadian media outlet recently saying his father was meeting with intelligence officers on a weekly basis that many began to ask this question: was he indeed a Canadian intelligence asset? You seem to be convinced that he was. Of course, no answers forthcoming from Canada. But on that note, Ambassador Sajjan Har, Ambassador Kaushik and Yashovardhan Azad, an absolute pleasure having you gentlemen on Global Lens tonight. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Neha. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. On that note, time for us to take a quick break here on Global Lens. Don't go anywhere. There's lots more on the other side.
They picked my husband.